but we sold more tickets than we expected. So instead of selling 2,700, we sold 2,772, 72 more, and we still lost money on the show. We lost over $1,000.
Tuesday off right. Good morning, get ready to take flight. Good morning, talking about the things. Good morning, it's me and me from the wings. From the wings.
Hi, I'm Reba Hervis, Artistic Director at Overshadowed Theatrical Productions. Welcome to this week's episode, From the Wings, with Emily Wilson.
Hello.
Thank you. You only have a few days left with us.
I'm so sad.
It's very sad.
Yeah, time has gone by so fast.
So,
like, unbelievably.
One of the things that Rebecca has asked me a lot of questions about is money.
You know, as she should.
She's like, when am I gonna get paid? And I'm like, never. No.
Volunteer
I'm like,
only.
From the Wings has no budget. We need to have lots of hours of you guys. In fact, I gave you a homework assignment.
Yes.
You're going home tonight and you're just putting it on.
Yeah.
Repeat.
I have no social life, actually. Never.
No, seriously. One of the things that is the most difficult, I think, as an artistic director of a theater, is planning the budget and thinking about where does the money go. And that's probably the number one question that anybody asks me or will ask you when you own your own theater or when you're running Overshadowed one day. We don't know what will happen. Yes.
Foreshadowing.
Well, we'll see. She's going to grad school. Y'all have to pray her back. We have a different philosophy. You can either be a non-for-profit or you can be a for-profit theater, right? And so you can check a lot of theaters in your regional areas and discover which one's which. A not-for-profit can get grants and can get donations that are tax deductible as well as other things. A for-profit is to make money, and that even if not everybody is getting rich off of it, it's definitely a different business model. I've often told people that the thing that I wish that I had done in school is take more business classes, because honestly, I filled my knowledge with the craft, not necessarily ever thinking that I was one day going to be running a business that I had responsibilities for and needed to think through all of these different things. Obviously, we've been in business for 21 years now, and our budget has really grown from the beginning to where it is now. So I thought, because Rebecca asked me this all the time, and because it would be a learning experience for you and maybe many of you out there, that you guys might really like to know a breakdown of the different things that we have to think about. So this is my Overshadowed notebook.
It looks like a Bible. Like when you had it here, I thought it was a Bible for a second.
Except it has my words instead of God's words in it, yes. The reason I started keeping it is because we had always had a budget that was in the black, always. We never had a problem with getting to the end of the year and thinking there's no money. Until, must have been around that time, we had a really bad year, and it had been something. Again, I didn't know how to run a business, and I'm not still saying that I'm really great at it, but we had a business manager, and because of our communication differences, when I felt like we were selling tickets and I felt like the money was coming in, but I didn't have a way of keeping tabs on it. And I would ask him, I'm like, do we have the money to do this? Do we have the money to do this? And he kept saying, yeah, we're fine. And then we got to the end of the year, and I think the year before we had finished in the plus by, I don't know, $20,000 or something, which is good because at the end of the year, I'm asking and having to pay for all the royalties and the scripts for the next year. But this year we finished like $40,000 in the red.
Oh my
now
goodness.
we didn't have a zero balance, but we had outpaid all of that, and people had prepaid for their tickets, and so we were okay, but our budget was off. And so one of the things that my board of directors asked me, they're like, well, how do other theater companies make sure that that doesn't happen? And I said, well, they have a producer that kind of keeps track of every production and your budget and talks to all the different heads of the organizations to make sure that if they need more money, that we figure out is there going to be enough. People can't just blindly spend money in the organization, even though we have several people that have credit cards that can be able to do that. So I had been making a budget for each show, but there wasn't anybody who was really checking and kind of organizing the whole thing. So I do think that is very, very important. And at that particular time, I started keeping track of each. I know some people use computers and spreadsheets and stuff like that, but honestly, I can find it a lot faster to go, oh, here we are. And I did that before that other show, so that must be over here. I can find it a lot faster than I can type in the numbers. Let's say I'm talking about the summer musical, because we end up spending the most money, probably that and Christmas. And so I start with the year before, and I look at everything that we spent money on, and we have broad budgets, broad categories, and then underneath that, it can whittle down to be just little things.
Right.
I start with figuring out how many tickets I'm going to sell, and the way I do that is also to compare it to last year. So let's say, for example, I have Singing in the Rain that's up here, and Singing in the Rain was a little bit more of an expensive show for us because we had to figure out how to make it rain, right? And so my goal was 2,700 people to come see the show. At that particular time, our average ticket price was $16.85. And so I knew that, okay, if I sold 2,700 tickets, that at $16.85, that we would bring in $49,950. And so I needed to make sure that my number came in underneath that. Now, this particular show, we didn't actually make it. We actually lost money on it. But that is kind of usual for us during the summer, because we usually have bigger shows, and so we spend more money on it. So the thing that we start with is the set build. Now, those of you who are not familiar with Overshadowed know that we are an all volunteer company, or mostly volunteer. We do pay small stipends to people who head up a category during the summer, and also to people like Yo, who is our set designer and set builder and who does most of the work. I figured that he was not going to be able to build the set by himself because of making it rain. We needed to have engineering help, and we needed to figure out how we were going to make the rain come down and what was the safest way so that we didn't flood out the place and all that kind of stuff. And so we actually have hired Higgins Construction. So thank you to the Higgins family for being so great to us and being really just a part of the team. This particular year, we had to pay $7,140 for our construction costs. Then our scripts, we had to pay $4,340, and we're like twice that now. Prices have really gone up. We must have added a show because there's an additional $900 written here, and then for some reason we didn't get our security deposit back. So that added another $400. And then we don't have an orchestra, so we have to pay for tracks. So that was another $1,150. Then materials for the set cost us another $1,206.43. So all that added together is like, this is what it's going to take for you before you can even start thinking about anything else that you have. We do always provide food for a cast party, and every once in a while when our workers are working here all day, then we'll bring some food in. I'm not exactly sure why it was so cheap, and it makes me wonder if we didn't get an expense right, but for a cast that big, we only had $500 in food costs. Tech was not as expensive for this particular show as I thought it was going to be. Tech covers a lot of different things. It covers batteries, and even for every show that we do, we spend hundreds of dollars in batteries. In fact, if you guys are gamers and you go through batteries a lot, we have to put in a new set of batteries for every mic. for every show because we can't take the chance that it's half used and it goes off in the middle of the show. So if you want to come up to the tech booth or send us a note and say, we would love to be gifted some of your half-used batteries, we would love them to go to a good home. And I know a lot of you are okay with half-used batteries. But anyway, that's one of the things that we have to do every show that people don't think about. We have printing expenses because we have to make copies of the scripts for the tech people in a way that they can write on them. We don't do anything illegal with that, but we have to do that. And then we have toner for the Canon and printers that we have. Now we need Canon to be a sponsor for things like that. All of those are business expenses that people don't usually think of what goes in day to day of making sure that we can run and put on the good show. Even things like having a medical kit backstage or having puck lights or glow tape or gaff tape, things like that. Sometimes we spend $100 a show just on things like that that people are not thinking about. Okay, so before I go on, are there any numbers? Because I'm almost halfway through the list. Are there any categories or numbers that are surprising to you so far?
I think probably like the scripts, and then
that's a low number.
Yeah, exactly. No, like having to buy scripts for us, it was like what, $6 a script or something for like 6 people.
Yeah.
So it really was not that big at all. But like music, having a musical is so much different than buying a regular script, and then because you have to pay for like copyrights and all that jazz. And then also, speaking of musicals, but then also having to buy the music for it, like, I guess, like,
well, you have an orchestra, right? Like, if
we had one for Sound of Music, but still, like, buying the sheet music for that's insane too.
Yep, you have to rent the orchestration.
Yeah.
Which I don't do, but it's a little cheaper than having to get the tracks.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially if you want high quality tracks, like you have to be able to pay a pretty penny for that.
Yeah.
But still, that's.
Yeah, I think that is probably the number one thing people get really surprised at. They don't even think about the fact that before we even start, we have to pay X number of dollars out to the licensing companies to be able to use their music and their scripts.
And it's per seat too.
Yeah,
like if you wanted for adding that other show.
That's the reason. Well, yeah, so $900, right, to add another show. Yep. So one of the things, the way that they figure it out, so every show kind of has a different price point. So when you pick a show, there can be shows that nobody really is doing very much anymore, and so those might not cost me as much to do. But something that has a really high name, that's very popular, like Joseph, I don't remember how much, because we just got done doing Joseph. Now we do 15 shows. For Joseph, we did 12.
Yeah, I think it was 3 weekends instead of 4.
Yeah. So the scripts and royalties were $9,026. So, and I did less shows.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I can't imagine doing something like Anastasia. Like, that always comes on, but like that's so popular. Yeah. And it's like more relevant. I cannot imagine.
Yeah.
I can't.
So it's a formula. You have to put down how many seats you have, how many seats you expect to sell, which is probably one of the hardest things that I do because it's a guess, right? It's like, is this going to be popular? Am I going to oversell it so that I'm paying for more than I really have to, or am I going to undersell it where then it makes me feel a little dishonest, because it's like, oh, wait a minute, I sold more than I thought that I was going to sell, and then it ends up to be a problem, right? And then also it's per seat, so you have to tell them how many shows you're doing, and we have different prices for our seats, so I have to actually say, okay, at the most expensive seat, I expect to sell 20% of the total tickets at this price, and 10% at this, and 15% at this, or whatever, and it has to equal 100%.
Right.
Some of the contracts that you do, they will allow you to give comp tickets, because I do have people who have ushered before or gave a certain donation that then we gave them a free ticket or something like that. So there's a percentage. There probably is like a 1 or 2 or 5% of the tickets that actually are sold or things that were comped out, and I don't get a rebate for that. It has to. Except every once in a while there'll be a company that'll allow you to do that will fill that in. So yep, it is definitely the most expensive thing that I do.
I kind of wish that they would have a class, like if you're doing dramatic productions.
I think that would be so smart.
Theater, like a business theater class, because then you can specifically work with these numbers.
Yes.
You can know what to expect and not be so surprised.
Yeah.
Like, I think that'd be such a great opportunity for them because
and keep in mind too, I don't pay people.
Yeah.
So if I had every actor making money, even if it was only $25 a performance, which is not very much, or the people, let's say, I give stipends, so it's not like they don't get anything, but like the whole staff that is involved with it, if everybody got a normal paycheck, I would have to raise my ticket prices to $100 a ticket or something.
Insane.
And obviously part of our mission is family affordable, because I believe that families should go to the theater together. And even at our price point now, some families don't have that luxury income to be able to have, 7 of their, some families have 5 children, right?
Yeah.
So to have 7 of them, or even 4 of them, go see a show 4 times a year, and at that price point, they just don't have it. So sometimes I definitely have to take that into consideration and know that this is going to be a problem for certain people because they're not going to be able to come see all 4 of the shows during the year. But then we go on and we talk a little bit about marketing, because if we want to grow, which Overshadow does, Overshadow would love to have their own theater space. So if one of you wealthy people that are watching right now think, oh, I would go to a theater and call it Rochester, if that happens to be your last name, the Rochester Family Theater, that sounds great. But we have to market to make sure that we sell enough tickets to meet the goal, right? So, because again, I don't have season tickets enough that would fill those seats. So how do I get them? I get them by marketing. And actually, I was talking to somebody recently who's kind of come on the team and has been helping us with the marketing. And he said, well, what's your budget for marketing? And I said, oh, I don't know. I usually $1,500 or $2,000 a show. And he kind of laughed at me. He's like, that is ridiculous that you don't spend more money on that. But God is filling the seats, and it's good. But I know that that is a number that should be much higher if we're going to grow and reach a wider audience. And then there's printing, which could go hand in hand with marketing, I guess, because then there's all this printing that you have to do. So printing for our playbills. We feel that our brochure that we hand out to people is kind of marketing for us, because some of our sponsors have ads that are in there, and we have put the next season in there or the next show that is coming up, and we put the bios of the people that are in the cast in there. And so it all kind of hand in hand goes with that. So our printing for Singing in the Rain was $3,066 just for the printing. Props for this particular show, I had budgeted $2,000, and you guys know what props are. And every show is a little bit different. So I kind of analyze it and go, okay, Fiddler on the Roof, we had done it before, so I didn't put as much money in the prop budget because I felt like I already had a lot of the stuff. But Singing in the Rain, we did it really, and so we actually ended up spending over budget. We spent $2,268. We have a wonderful rehearsal space, but you have to pay rent, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because the church is really kind to us, and I know if it's still quite a bit in our budget, but I know if we left here and we went someplace else, that number would probably be
so much bigger. Yeah.
4 times as much.
Yeah.
As what we pay. And so that's something to consider when you're starting a theater as well. And then for costumes, this was a spectacular show for us, but we didn't have a lot of things that were like 20s and 30s that were showgirl kind of costumes. So we budgeted $5,000 and we spent $8,900. So we blew past, unfortunately, that budget.
Well, also, some of the costumes are getting wet. from.
Right.
So
we had to have
too.
duplicate suits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did have to do that. So, and then there's hair and makeup, and we budgeted $2,000 for that, and we came in at $1,600. So pretty much under budget, but we sold more tickets than we expected. So instead of selling 2,700, we sold 2,772, 72 more. And we still lost money on the show. We lost over $1,000 on the show, which is not terrible. But when you're trying to do a budget and you're trying to put on a show, those are things that you have to consider. So then the next summer, I looked at where we overspent and how much money we felt like we would have to do. So then looking at the last half, is there anything that you're like, wow, I can't believe?
Well, I'm kind of thinking what you would do differently if you would do Singing in the Rain.
Again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you kind of have an expectation, but I guess you would have more of the things because you've done it already.
Yeah, so my costumes would not be as high unless you get a cast that doesn't fit the costumes that you have.
Right.
Because every cast is different, right? And so we have different sizes. But I still shouldn't have to spend as much. That number should be lower. I think the same thing with props. Printing would probably still be high. Sorry. Printing would probably still be high. Maybe those prices will even go up because of the world and the way things are going up now.
In this economy.
And of course the set and building is always...
Oh yes, always going up.
Yeah, we don't have a warehouse, and so it's not like we can save everything, and so we really pretty much have to rebuild it.
Right.
And the scripts and the royalties also it's not like you can save it. You have to send it back at the end of the show.
Yeah.
So,
which is so sad because I guess it makes sense though because then you'd have to purchase it over again.
And because the people who wrote it deserve their royalty, right?
That is true.
So I do believe that the workman is worthy is higher, and so they wrote it. It's not honest for me to keep it and do it again. It really isn't. So. One of the things that we've talked about a lot for Overshadowed, God is really good to us, and you guys are such great supporters of coming to see the show, and we hope that we're giving you lots of entertainment. The one area that it's really hard for us to grow in, though, is in our donations, and it's been something that's really hard for me as a business person, or my lack of being a business person, because I believe that the money is God's. And I believe that he'll put on your heart what it is that you're supposed to do with your money. Right. And a lot of people have causes that they're very passionate about. It was so funny. I was just reading somebody's Facebook post, and she talked about here are the charities that I support. And I was like, oh, mine is not there. Why am I not there? But she did talk about Steppenwolf, or a theater that was downtown that I really was like, oh, well, so if she does have a theater on there, it could be mine. I do think it's good for you in your own giving to be well-rounded. I do believe very strongly that art is very important in people's lives because it is a time for you to escape. It is a time for you to learn. If you come to Overshadowed often enough, we have audience members that feel comfortable enough with us that they'll come to us and they'll share a prayer request with us and we'll pray with them. But even beyond that, the fact that they are, just like one of the episodes we talked about previously about spreading your imagination and giving you something to think about, we do that with all of our shows. And sometimes they're a biblical story, and sometimes they're a story about life, and sometimes it's just for you to forget and laugh a little bit. But it's always with a lens that we hope that it can challenge you and it can give you something to enjoy. And honestly, you can see from the numbers that we threw out that if we're ever going to get to the place that when I retire, which let's face it, I would love it if God gives me 7 more years to do Overshadowed. But at some point, we're going to have a staff that's going to be able to come in and be able to run Overshadowed, and they're not going to be people who are able to just volunteer their time. And we're going to, so, what's not in this budget is a $60,000 artistic director fee and a $75,000 technical director's salary a year, and a set designer's salary a year, and a costume designer's set. It's like we have instead, $1,000, $300 here, $400 here, but that's not even in my budget. That's over here to the side. I didn't even talk to you about those numbers, right? So if you want to see theaters survive in your area, you have to do more than buy a ticket.
So what can somebody do to support a theater without just buying a ticket? Like, what are the opportunities that they can help small theaters like Overshadowed?
Well, number one, they can always volunteer, right? And I think our world has kind of changed a little bit that we don't volunteer as much because time, honestly, is a little bit of a commodity as well, and that's hard. And we don't all have the time to be able to give without asking for money for it, right? But if you have a couple hours that you're like, hey, I could come in and help paint the set so that you don't have to pay somebody to do it, or I could come in and sew some buttons on or iron or whatever. One of the costs that I don't put in here at this particular show is the cost of the dry cleaning, and so that's not here either, and that's usually a couple $1,000. So there's a lot of miscellaneous things that are not in here. So another thing you can do is you can sign up to be a monthly giver. And I know that sometimes people think, well, I don't really have that much, I can't really do that. Did you know that if you only give $5 a month, it ends up to be $60 a year? Well, $60 a year is not going to buy me a costume, but it might buy me a hat. It might buy the batteries for one night of the show. And if 10 people signed up to do $5 a month, then all of a sudden you can see that your gift is really magnified, and it makes it worth. So I want to challenge you to give to Overshadowed. Now, maybe the monthly giver thing is not something that you're interested in. Rebecca, who's behind the camera at this point, and I have been talking about the different areas. And she suggested, what if people became a sponsor of a show? So looking at that, these are last year's prices. 3 years ago prices. So this particular show cost us roughly $50,000. Some shows are different with the price. This is a musical, it's a little bit more. If you said, I want to be sponsor of the entire show, what a huge blessing that would be to a theater, us. You could say, hey, what do I need to do that? Write us, call us, whatever. And what we would do is we would give you top billing on everything if that's what you wanted. For instance, we'll say, Emily here has just extra $50,000 laying around as a college student always does. So we could put the Emily Wilson sponsors Singing in the Rain, or the Wilson family, or whatever she wanted it to be, and it would go on all the advertising and on everything and be proudly displayed, and it would be a tax write-off as well. I don't think people realize that is a tax write-off as well, which is so incredibly great. But then we could break out the other things too. And so what if costumes was really important to you? And we could say, look, you can sponsor costumes for $10,000, or the tech budget. Maybe you're a tech person at your church and you're like, hey, okay, $2,000. And we could also put those sponsors in the playbill as well. And that is a way that you can help support Overshadowed with it that you might not have even thought about. We also have fundraising events during the year. We have a gala that's coming up in the fall. And I will tell you that a large part of our operating budget depends on a certain amount of money being given at the gala. We have a goal this year of $60,000 that we need to add to just all the other things that we have. Because what's not listed here is maintenance and insurance and taking care of the property that we do have, or replacing some of the equipment that we've had for a while, or lights that we've had, because now we're 21 years in the business, and so things break and we need to fix them. It is an ongoing business, just like running your own business at home. Anyway, Emily, before we end, is there anything that has challenged you as far as, because I know you're talking about going out and being a director or What do you think after being here as many months as you have and seeing what we've done, and then now hearing about the numbers and stuff? What does this do to your mind and heart and spirit?
I think that it kind of puts a realistic perspective on everything, because I mean, when I'm at school, I'm just focusing on directing and crafting my art and finding a better way to communicate with my actors or finding a better way to understand scripts. But having it in a realistic perspective, and like, things do cost money and you have to pay for things and you have to pay for royalties and technical aspects of it. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned actually being here, is having a realistic mindset. I still would love to go into directing, and this is something that I'm so passionate about, and I think that this is where God is leading me. But I would never have really understood any of that if I hadn't gone out to a theater and heard this aspect of it. And so, like, having the idea of having more business, like, background, and I guess like having the organizational leadership kind of is going to help a little tiny bit, because it's more of an business kind of mindset towards things. And yeah, I guess that's like one of the biggest things that I've learned even today, hearing all of this and like understanding it for the future and how I can apply that and have a realistic mindset towards the arts instead of having this fantasy that I've crafted for a while.
It would be nice if we all could just do it
for
free.
No, for real.
Yeah.
And I feel like the arts is just so underappreciated nowadays, and it's so underfunded. And so it's such a big influence on everybody's lives, and they don't understand.
They don't even realize it.
Yeah, exactly. Even movies, or if you're not into theater, like physical portraits or paintings, or even just like billboards that you see.
Or concerts.
Exactly, yeah, music, and it just has such an influence on everybody's lives, and if we really understood that and knew that, then I think
we would
the
be
arts,
so lost without the arts.
Yeah, and I think that people would be more appreciative of it and give more to it, so yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's so fun. I've loved being here and learning so much about it, and so I'm sad to leave.
Sad for you to leave.
But I'll be back. Mark my words, I'll be back here.
You guys have heard it here. Until next time, this is just me.
And me.
Talking to you
From the wings.